Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining yet another episode of the Azar Mindset Podcast. I am your host, Altamise Nicole, and I am so excited to have yet another phenomenal conversation with an amazing woman that will definitely empower and inspire you along your journey in life. And today, we have Dr. Shamieka Dean. She is an award-winning business owner, a social media thought leader, and she is number one in marketing solutions for helping her clients transform through truth and thought-provoking strategies. She has this idea that a healthy belief system can truly become a birthing system. And she teaches the importance of living in the life that we are working to create. And I absolutely love that. So, Dr. Dean, tell me a little bit more about yourself and what led you to this journey of, helping people transform their lives into what they desire.
So I always stumble a little bit when someone says, "Tell me about yourself."
It's
uh,
okay. It's okay.
however, I am a wife of almost 18 years.
Mm.
I am a grandma of two little glam princesses, and
Oh.
I am a mother of three. I am. I think I always say that I'm a perfect blend of humor, holiness, and a whole lot of happiness. Like that's who I am. So,
I love that. I love
and
that.
yeah, and I just love, I just love life. Um, and how I got on this journey of helping people to transform. I believe that we uncover our purpose as we evolve, right? I
Mm-hmm.
don't think our purpose is something that we ever have to find. I believe that it just has to be uncovered because as we grow and evolve, we have all these labels and limitations that are placed upon
Mm-hmm.
us. And so
Yeah.
often we begin to live into the box of the labels and the limitations until we have that epiphany or that moment where we know with everything in us that there's something more that we're supposed to be doing. And
Yeah.
so I believe that's how I got here, not by any one situation, but just a series of incidents in my life that made me aware that there was more that I should be doing. And I can say this though, the very first time I heard someone say to me, "You changed my life,"
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of that moment, that feeling, that fulfillment that I knew I wanted that response no matter what I did. So whether
Mm-hmm.
it's teaching marketing or, business strategies or talking about marriage, that is the fulfillment that I get. And that lets me know that I'm in alignment with what I'm supposed to do because I believe that no matter what our gifts, skills, or talents are, we're always supposed to be impacting someone's life.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I definitely identify with you about saying it's about a series of events, right?
Hmm.
That gets you to
Hmm.
that point. Some are more pivotal than others.
Yes,
You know what I mean? Like
absolutely.
I can definitely think of a few pivotal moments in my life where I it was like a fork in the road and I
Hmm.
could go left or I could go right.
Yes,
And thank God for the Holy Spirit that said go this way and I listened. You know what I'm saying?
absolutely.
Or those
Yes.
moments where I didn't, but there was like a hand in the
Hmm.
situation that legitimately just pulled me out.
Out.
You know what
Absolutely.
I'm saying?
Hmm.
So like
Hmm.
what were some of those moments for you? Like what was a pivotal moment in your life that you identify as like, that was God that either told me to go
Oh,
left or right
yes.
and not listened or like had
Absolutely.
his hand just
Uh-huh.
covering me.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
what was one of those pivotal moments for you?
Oh my God. I have quite a few, as you said, but the one that comes to mind at this moment is my marriage. When my husband and I
Mm,
divorced after 7 years
mm,
of marriage, and then we remarried. God restored our marriage. That was one of the most pivotal ones because I'm one of those girls, it's like when it's done, it's done, right? Like you
Right,
vanish
right.
like a vapor. I
Yep.
never knew you. Who are you? Kind of thing, right? So that was me. So when the ink was dry, on the paper, and I God told me that He was going
Mm,
to restore our marriage. Um, I didn't think that was the case. I
mm,
always tell the story of the day that I got the papers out of the mailbox and I went up the stairs and just hit my knees. A divorce is one of the most painful experiences ever.
yeah,
And so
yeah.
I remember hitting the floor and I just said, God, how did I get here? I never want to go through this again. So whatever I have to do, tell me and I'll do it. And so in that moment when my heart was just filled with agony, right? And pain,
Mm,
and I'm crying, from the depth of my soul. And God told me to pray for his new wife.
mm, Pooh child.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So,
Wait, wait, wait,
that's one of
wait,
those.
wait. I have
Yeah.
I have questions.
Okay.
I have questions. Um, was this like when you got the divorce papers when God
Yeah.
told
It
you
was
to
that
pray?
day. It was
Oh,
that day.
oh. So he was already married, like remarried,
No, 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 no,
or
no. No, he
okay,
wasn't.
okay,
He
okay.
wasn't. So the story goes like God says, pray for his new wife. And so, me being who I am, I said, well, I'm going to pray for my new husband too, because I'm not going to be by myself. You know, I mean, we can
Right,
do this, guy, however you want to do it, but I'm just saying,
right,
I'm going to put my
right.
bid in too. And so, so I began to, to pray for, of course, grudgingly initially, but then I started to
Mm,
think, what kind of woman would I want to be around my children? What kind of
mm,
heart would I want
mhm,
her to have? And so I started to pray for
mm,
her heart, her attitude, just the way that she would, have to interact with my children. And then I started to
mm,
pray, for my new husband and all the things that I wanted him to be. Not knowing the
mm.
entire time God was had me praying for myself because I
Yes.
needed to become a new woman and I actually needed to become a wife so that God could restore us. And he needed to be a
Mm,
different kind of man before God restored us. At that time, I didn't know that was what was
what
happening.
it was.
But moving forward, that's exactly what happened.
Wow.
And yeah, so God set me up for that one. And I'm thankful that he did. But, like I said at
Right.
the time, I was just like, that is the devil. Like, because God ain't, not in this
God,
moment,
you
not
listen, I don't think people realize God has such a sense of
sense of
humor.
humor. Hmm.
Yes, like such a
Hmm.
sense of humor where you just be like, "What now? What?" And
Yeah.
like, and then you look back, hindsight,
Yes.
and you just be
You're
like,
like,
"Oh, okay, you funny. You real
right,
funny."
right,
Like,
right. And
and
that's what it
oh,
was because, I just did not see why he would, tell me to do
mm,
that. But in retrospect, what God revealed to me was when we initially got married, I was a single married woman.
mm,
And what that means is the only thing that changed when I said I do was my last name. I still had a single woman's mentality, right? And
mhm,
so I took that into my marriage. I was still very much in what I tell women now, in survival mode. I was still in that space trying to protect myself, making sure my children were okay. My heart was very
mm,
guarded. And just the mentality of not even knowing how to share space with someone, not knowing what it looked like to really become one. Submission
right,
was a dirty word for me. What do you mean?
mm,
I don't do that. What do you mean?
yeah,
Right? Because
mm,
I had the wrong understanding of what submission was and those kind of things. And so um, a lot of women are in that space and don't realize it. And so when stuff hits the fan in their marriage, we all have that question: how did I get here? What happened?
yeah,
Right? Because we loved each other, right? Things were going pretty good. Um, but when you don't become a wife before you get married, then you take all of your single womanhood into your marriage. And so you can't build
Yes.
and become one or be unified when you are separated internally. And so
Mm.
that's a part of what happened. And I always tell people, they say, well, what did he do? Right. My thing is, it's his story to tell his story. My job
Right.
is to tell my story and what I learned and
Yes.
what God did for me. And it's not about taking 100% responsibility for the demise of the marriage. However, I take 100% responsibility for myself and how I
Yes.
contributed to, the demise of the marriage.
Yes. 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 And it's so important, as people are listening to this, understand that your connection and your relationship with God and
Mm-hmm.
how he speaks to you,
Mm-hmm.
he will reveal to you different things. He will guide
Absolutely.
and instruct you. And in my situation with my ex-husband, so I think when we met, I was still married. I think when we met,
Yes.
I was still
Mm-hmm.
married. And I realized that through that season, I identify with what you mean about like that single wife,
Mm-hmm.
like
Single
I'm
married woman.
single married woman,
Uh-huh.
primarily because I wasn't taught,
Yeah.
and I was completely unaware. And I remember telling my ex-husband, I said, I was taught to be aware of men. I wasn't taught to love
Mm.
them.
Ooh,
So I said,
that's
I need
deep.
you to be okay with teaching me how to
Mm-hmm.
love you.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, for his broken pieces, he didn't understand.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, "What do you mean, teach me? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
just love me?" And I'm like, "Well, when I love you, you turn away."
Mm-hmm.
So it was a journey, and I had to lean into hearing God.
Mm-hmm.
And in our situation, mine was kind of the opposite of yours. Like,
Mm-hmm.
our divorce process was peaceful. It
Mm-hmm.
took 3 months, like
Mm-hmm.
from signing to filing to signing, literally
Mm-hmm.
3 months.
Wow.
And uh and God told me, he said, I need to get to my son. And he said, and if
Wow.
you are unable to move out the way, you will continue to be collateral damage. I need you to
Ooh.
get He said, I need to get to my son. So
Wow.
I had to get out the way. I had to
Mm-hmm.
get out the way. And I learned I can release in love.
Mm-hmm.
I can be intentional with not just my heart, but
Mm-hmm.
every person's heart involved. And I
Wow.
cannot manipulate God. His
That's
no
right.
is his no.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if he
Yes.
say this ain't it, there's no scripture in the Bible that I can follow to be like, I'm gonna do this all right, Jesus, because if I do
Right.
this right, you gonna bless my marriage. And he gonna be sitting there with the okey doke face, like, I said what I said.
I
I'll
said what
cover
I said.
you. You gonna
Mm-hmm.
be in the permissible will of God, but that is not my divine. That's not what I have for
That's
you.
good. That's
Like, and
good.
I literally, like, Dr. Dean, I did everything by the Holy Bible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We were celibate. We
Mm-hmm.
were, we didn't live together before marriage. We did all
Mm-hmm.
these things right.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Had the perfect love story, all
Mm-hmm.
the things right.
Mm-hmm.
And God said, I said what I said.
Mm.
And he said, and I love you too more than I love the marriage. I
Yeah.
need you guys healthy. I need you guys to do
Mm-hmm.
this. And
Wow.
and to me, that was the moment where I realized I gotta be in alignment with God.
Absolutely.
Not in alignment with what I think or what I
Mm-hmm.
want or what I desire or what I tell him I
Mm-hmm.
want. I
Mm-hmm.
have to align myself with what he said to do and
Right.
not what I want,
Mm-hmm.
because it may work out for a little bit, or it may feel like it work out for a little bit, but you're
But it
going to end up,
crumbles
it crumbles. You end up right back where
where you
God
started.
said, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
uh-huh, literally,
Yeah.
literally,
Yeah.
like right back. He'll wipe that slate clean, but you're going to
Mm-hmm.
be right back where he said, I told you to go this way, you know?
Yeah.
And like in your journey, it's like the complete opposite. And it's so beautiful. in
Mhm.
terms of like how God literally restored.
He
Like,
did.
tell me about that process of like going from divorced
Mhm.
on your knees, being like, okay, God,
Mhm.
what are we doing here? To
Mhm.
like your wedding day, second go
Yeah.
round.
Yeah. So the journey was, it started with prayer. And this is why I
Mm,
tell people that prayer is not just, um, prayer is so powerful because it is transformative, it is preventative, and it's also restorative. And
mm,
so it started there. But the key thing was that I was praying for the woman I needed to become first so that I could be the wife I needed to be second. Right.
mm,
So
mm.
there were a series of
Ooh,
things that as I went through this journey, God revealed to me that were a problem, in the marriage. And one of the things was that number one, I didn't forgive, right? I didn't know how
mm,
to forgive. And so whenever you hold on to unforgiveness, unforgiveness creates an obstruction of flow. And
yeah.
so we think that we're preventing ourselves from being hurt, but we're actually preventing our hearts from being healed because your
Mm,
heart only has one entry point. And so while you're trying
mm,
to shut your heart off to prevent being hurt, you're not giving God access to actually go in and do the healing that needs to take place. And so that was one of the things that God showed me. And then the other thing that God showed me was that I didn't know how to be loved because I had experienced so much toxicity in past relationships and childhood trauma, that love was actually foreign to me.
mm,
So even when my husband did attempt to love me the best way that he knew how, that wall was up. And so he was
yeah.
forced to try to tear down a wall that he never built.
Mm,
So
mm,
I needed to go through that, and it started with prayer and then, forgiveness. And then honesty, being honest with myself was one of the very important things. I had to be real with myself that I was afraid to truly open up. um, I didn't know how to actually love him beyond my hurt, right?
mm,
And so
mm,
those were some of the things that God began to do in me. The final thing that really kind of put the nail in the coffin, remember I said I was also praying for my new husband, and I was praying for someone who knew me completely, but would still love me unconditionally. That was one of the prayers
mm,
that I prayed because I knew that there were still some wounds. I knew that I still had stuff that I would have to work through, but I needed someone who knew me almost
yeah.
better than I knew myself,
Yeah.
and so we were traveling home to my son's grandfather's funeral, and there was a tornado, and so
Mm,
I got caught in the winds of it, and so
mm,
it blew me to the ground and caused some injuries to my spine.
mm.
So, excuse me, the initial impact, I didn't even realize I was injured until I got back home, went to the doctor because my back was just in excruciating pain. So, it was his weekend to get the kids, and he brought them back, and he asked, where I was, and they said, oh, she's in the room, she's laying down because her back is hurt. So he just walked in, to check on me. And I was, scooting my little self to the bathroom because I was in so much pain. And so,
Mm,
he said, let me just take care of you until you can get back because you can't take care of the kids like this. So my little mean self was like, I don't need you. I don't need you. I can do it by myself. So anyway, he said, just let me take care of you. He said, I'll sleep in the guest room. And, so I'm like, yeah, you can sleep, but we're not doing nothing, blah, 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 all that stuff. So just putting my little boundaries up. Right. And
yeah.
so, that's what he did. He stayed and he nursed me, back to health, and, he cooked, he took care of the kids. He did all of the things. And when I was better, he was getting ready to leave. And my youngest son said, Mommy, no, Daddy, look at Mommy. Isn't she so beautiful? And so he said, yeah, she is beautiful. And so my son said, well, why don't you take her on a date?
Mm,
And that's how it started. So we started dating. And so
mm,
one of the things that I prayed for my new husband was that I wanted us to date. I wanted us to be friends. I wanted someone that, would take care of me at my worst. And so all of the things that I was praying
Mm.
for were showing up in him because he was becoming
Mm.
a new man. And so we went to talk to our old pastor, and our old pastor at the time told me, even when we got divorced, he said, "That's not the end for you all." And I was just like, whatever. You don't know what you're talking about because I'm done. And so, and then I had a friend of mine at the time who also was saying, she said, God is going to, I just believe God's going to restore your marriage. And I said, well, I don't want to restore it. So stop praying that prayer. I'm good.
Mm.
And we went to talk to our pastor, and he just basically was like, I knew this, so we did counseling. And the sign for me, though, because I said, God, if this is really you,
Mm.
because my husband, he did ask after we had dated for a while, he said, have you thought about us remarrying? And I said,
Mm.
well, I thought about it, but I don't know if that's what God wants us to do. So I prayed, God, if this is your will, for our marriage to be restored, then these are the things that I want him to do. And so one of the things was he had to set up marital counseling.
Mm.
Um, he had to complete that counseling. He had to set the wedding date. He had to do, so there was just a series of things. I didn't tell him, but those are the things that I
Mm.
prayed. And everything
Yeah.
that I prayed, he actually did that. So
Mm.
it was just like, okay, well, how much more confirmation, how much more
Well, right.
confirmation
What
do you
else you
need?
need?
What else you need? And so, but yeah, and we remarried. We actually had a wedding this time because the first time we didn't have a wedding. We just went to the courthouse, got the papers. My uncle married us in the living room of my apartment. Um,
Mm.
and we had a little reception, afterwards. But this time we actually had a wedding. All of our family was there, and yeah, we'll be
Wow.
celebrating. Our 18-year anniversary was June 11th from the new date. So, yep,
Oh, happy
18 years. Thank
anniversary.
you, thank you,
Oh,
thank
that's
you.
so sweet. And how long has it been since the remarriage? The
11 years.
11 years.
Mm-hmm. 11
Wow.
years. Yep.
If there's someone listening and they find themselves in just a broken place
Mm-hmm.
from divorce, loss, just dealing with toxic relationship after toxic relationship, walls are up, but they are craving the very thing that they fear, which is
Mm-hmm.
that love. Like what advice would you give her? What would you tell her in this moment?
I would tell her that she has to fall in love with what she wants more than she has fallen in love with the fear.
Mm.
And I say that because sometimes fear is our safe place. It's our comfort zone. And so we begin to love it because although it's not getting us what we want, it's keeping us safe from a hurt that we don't want to experience. And so fall in love with the thing that you want more than you do the thing that you fear. Because when you do that, then you'll have the courage to go after what you truly want.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that I would say to her is don't allow the one who didn't know how to love you to keep you from the one who will.
Mm.
That is a power that they should never have. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you truly want it, then choose to free yourself through the power of forgiveness and freeing yourself from the pain of your past so that you can experience the beauty of your present and your future. Um,
Mm.
if I didn't choose to open my heart up again, I wouldn't experience what I have now
Yeah.
because for so many years I was so afraid in because of what happened in my past until I was cutting off of everything that I desired. So don't allow the person of your past to keep you from the love that you want to experience in your present. Take
Mm.
that power back. Take that power back.
Yes.
Because the more you hold on to that, they win. They've done
Yeah.
exactly what the enemy sent them in your life to do,
Yeah.
is to prevent you from experiencing the thing that God wants you to have, and that
Mhm.
is a pure love. And the other thing is that you have to understand that you deserve it. You deserve it. It doesn't
Yep.
matter what you've done, the path that you've gone down. You deserve for someone to know you completely and love you unconditionally. But if you don't give that to yourself first, it's almost impossible for
That
somebody else
part.
to do it, because you won't know what it feels like,
That's
and you'll
right.
reject it every single time.
That's right. And you would also not be able to identify when it is not. Right?
Yes.
If you
Yep.
know how to fully love yourself in
Mm-hmm.
all the you would be able to identify when someone isn't there, and you'd be like,
Right.
"Oh." You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And you would
That
honor
counterfeit.
yourself. Yes, yes, the
Mm-hmm.
smoke and mirrors. And you
Mm-hmm.
will honor yourself enough to be like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think this person's the right person for me, rather
Yes.
than trying to make it fit and trying to make it work.
Yeah, because it
And
starts with how you treat you, right?
yes,
You set the
yes,
standard, you set the tone. So if you don't know what it really looks like you said, you can't identify when it's not. You can't
yeah,
identify it because you haven't clearly defined what that even looks like to you. What does it look like for you for someone to love you unconditionally, right? What does it even
mm,
look like for someone to love you to you?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And so oftentimes we're so busy trying to love and to give and to be to everyone else that we haven't even taken the time to identify that for ourselves, especially if you're a mom,
mm-hmm.
or even a woman who works or owns a business. You're used to being on the serving end, that you don't know what it looks like to be served. And so that's where you have to take the time and be intentional. So even when I used to coach, single women, I sent them on a challenge. So, for the next 7 days, I want you to love yourself. I want you to document what that looks like. Because if you
Mm.
can't accurately articulate what it looks like to love you, you can't even communicate that to your spouse. You can't.
Yes. Yep.
And so they can give you
Mm.
100% everything that they know to do to show you, but because you haven't clearly identified it for yourself, then when they're even on the in trying to do it, you won't recognize it as love.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And like, whoo, that's good. That's good.
Hmm.
That's really good. I kind of want to sit with that for a second, because
Hmm.
I think, I don't know. As women, I feel like we just been taught. Society teaches us to be a certain way, to
To
do
do.
certain things,
Hmm.
and then if you are a woman that grew up in the church,
Oh yeah.
then you it's a whole it's a whole different ball game
That's
in
a whole
terms
different
of like,
podcast episode.
listen, because I was like, I remember when I got married, we had premarital counseling. It was great, it was beautiful. We kind of tapped into sex, but we didn't really tap into sex. But
Hmm.
did I mention that we were celibate and we dated for 5 years? So
Wow.
there was some things,
Hmm. Yeah.
and no
Yeah.
one, it's as if the church be like, don't have sex till you're married, and then you get married,
And
and
you
then it's
don't
like,
know what
no,
to do.
you don't know what you're doing. They be like,
Right.
now
You're like,
go on and make some babies, go on and have some. Y'all married
that's
now,
it.
and
That's it.
you like, okay, well, you don't know what you like.
You
You
don't.
don't know what he like. You don't
Nope.
know how to figure out what he like. And if he tried to tell you what he like, you clutch your invisible pearls, because
Hmm.
you like, what? Excuse me?
Yeah.
But
Yes. Yes.
and it's just
Because sex is so pure, but it has been perverted. And so even in the
yes.
place where we should be able to have a conversation about the purity of sex and how God created it and all of those things,
Yes.
because it has been so perverted, we can't even have the conversation. So then what happens
Mm,
is, unless you're both mature enough to build and to develop and learn how to, please each other, then that's when outside influences can come in
that's right.
and mess up everything. Or you're trying to fulfill these sexual desires because the world has told you this,
The
because the
world
church
tells you
failed to do
this.
so, you
Yep.
know? Yeah.
Yep. Or you end up with one partner who can't fully clarify and explain what they want,
Hmm.
or they don't
Yep.
feel comfortable doing
They
it.
don't.
So they seek it in other ways and they
Hmm.
discover things on their own, or you just clam up. That's just an area of your
And then
marriage
there's
that's
no
like, oh,
chemistry, and there's no,
yes.
real intimacy and things like that, because
Mm.
again, it's been perverted so much so until now. If you mention sex in church, people are like
Mm-hmm.
it's a forbidden fruit or something, you know?
Right.
I'm just like, you know, God created
God
this,
made
right?
it.
Like He made it.
Right. Right,
Yeah.
right. Yes, yes, yes. Oh my gosh. This is absolutely beautiful. And I love your love story. It's
Thank
beautiful.
you.
I
Thank you.
love
Thank you.
it. How did you like what was your journey of falling in love with yourself?
Man, so I started with small things. I started with things that, um, like food, right? So for so
Yeah.
many years, I didn't even realize I didn't like tomatoes, but
Mm,
I ate tomatoes because my mom used to put tomatoes on the burger, right? So I would always put tomatoes on my burger because that's what my mom used to do. And so I
mm,
started just looking at all of the things that I was doing, and I asked myself the question, is this something you really like? Or is this something you're doing because this is what you were taught to do?
mm,
I thought about the way that I wore my hair. And that was when I shaved all my hair off around the sides, because I realized that I had this complex about short hair,
mm,
and but I really wanted it. It was something I wanted to do. So I
mm,
started there. I started looking at the clothes that I wore. And I said, is this something I really like? Like, how does this make me feel, when I put it on?
mhm.
And I just really started trying different things to see like what I loved. I looked at myself and, just did a full assessment of who is Shamieka Dean. Who is she
Mm,
without the labels of a mom, without being a wife, without being in ministry, without, being in business, without all that? Who am I at the core?
yeah.
Right. And I made a decision that I was going to love who I was at the core. So whether I use hood lingo or whether I was in the boardroom, whatever it was. So instead of me trying to,
Mm,
um, dumb down or remove parts of myself, I just decided to show up fully, right?
mm,
So if I want to talk in slang on my social media profile, I'm going to do that. Why? Because that's the essence of who I am. It's the
yeah.
beauty of what makes me who I am. And so I just started daily falling in
Mm,
love with myself, finding out about, who I am. I realized that I love the arts, so I love plays and, I love jazz music, and I love
mm.
some old school R&B. I love some good worship. I don't like struggle music. I don't like the struggle gospel songs. I deleted all
Right,
struggle
right.
songs from a playlist. Um, and just falling in love with myself, because all of the things that initially I was told were not ideal, or the formula for success are the things that people grew to love about me, but it wasn't until I loved them about myself first. And
Mhm.
so I started to identify who I am. I am creativity. I am experience. I am love. I am power. I am strength. I am all of the things, regardless of what position, what title, regardless of any of those things, still stand. You can never take those things away from me, because that's who I am. And
Mm,
so that was my journey. I did a 7-day Uncover Your Purpose challenge for myself first. And I
mm,
thought about the things that I loved. I thought about the things that when I was in, a child and adolescent, the things that just made me brighten up and happy. And what I realized was all of those things were who I was, and I was fine being them until the world told me who I couldn't be.
Mm.
So I went back to the core of, of
Mhm.
those things, the things I was, made fun of about, right? All of those things. And so um there's
Wow.
not a person on this earth that can make me feel any kind of way about me. I love me,
Yeah.
So it was a journey, because as I revisited some of those moments, it brought back some painful memories.
Mm.
Um, but anyone that played a part in those painful memories, I made a decision then to forgive them. Not thinking about, do they deserve this? It wasn't about that. I deserve to be healed. And so
Right.
I understood that the longer I held on to it, the more power they had over me. And
Yeah.
that was just the power I wasn't willing to let anyone have. And so here we
Mm.
are today. I'm just all over social media and all over the world, and people like, that girl is crazy. And I'm like, hey, it is what it is.
I love it. I love it. And you touched on the that process just filtering up, feelings and
Hmm.
old memories of the past and
Hmm.
things like that. And I often say the only way through it is through it.
That's
We
it.
can't stuff down, like, and I truly believe that when those memories come up, it's coming up to be healed. It's
Hmm.
coming up
Absolutely.
so that we can heal it, not to
Hmm.
remind us of the pain,
Right.
but to truly heal from it.
Right.
And the only way to heal from it is that we got to face it. It has to come up to the surface, and we got to
Hmm.
sit in it, and we got to allow God to just work on our hearts as
Hmm.
we either forgive them, or sometimes, a lot of times, it's about
Ourselves.
forgiving ourselves. I think that's the hardest. I
That's
honestly
the
think
guard.
that's
Yeah,
probably the hardest
it
thing
is.
to do, is like
Hmm.
forgiving yourself and
Right.
releasing yourself from the judgment of
Hmm.
whatever that was.
Right.
What are your thoughts
But
on that?
so here's the thing that really set me free. And it says, when we ask, God forgives. And so it's in that
Mm,
moment. It's not on a Forgiveness is not on a probationary period. It's
mm,
not a layaway plan. It's not that he's saying, well, after you do good for so long, I'll forgive you. And
mm.
so I also made a decision. I said, I'm not allowing anybody to hold me hostage to anything God has forgiven me of. Like, because why should I give you more power than I give him?
Yeah.
And so I said, you know, those things are of the past. And
Mm.
so, a past is like a millisecond, right? We're the
Hmm.
only ones that put a
So
probationary
much
period.
time on it. Yeah. Oh
Yeah, we
yeah.
do that. And so I said,
Mm.
so you mean to tell me when I ask you to forgive like you do it right now, like I don't have to say less? Say less. you know? And so it's not that I don't take accountability, right? Like
Right.
I take accountability, I do the work, but I don't hold myself hostage to things because
Mm.
he doesn't. And so whenever I found myself um, still holding on to something, I say, who am I afraid of that is going to reject me because of this?
Mm.
Who am I giving this power to? And it's often someone from your past, whether it's a
Mm.
parent or a friend or something. And so then I have to release that to him as well. God, I give that to you. I give them to you. I give that to you. Right. And so
Mm.
it is difficult to forgive yourself when you are holding yourself to someone else's ruler, when you're
Mm.
using someone else's metric to define or to identify you. That's when forgiveness or forgiving yourself becomes more difficult, because now you're worried about what they are going to say, feel, think, and all of that. And that's why it's so difficult, because think about it. And I always use this when I'm explaining this, but whenever you will fall, like if you're in the house by yourself, if you fall, you laugh and you get up and keep going. It is
Right.
not unless you fall in front of other people that you start really
Looking
thinking about, oh
around.
my God, the
Who
embarrassment, the
look? Who
shame.
saw it?
Yeah, who saw it,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so, so that's when I realized that the struggle that I was having forgiving myself was just because of the people that I've fallen in front of. And so I
Mm.
had to release myself from the opinions of people. I had to ask God, God, give me the courage to release
Yeah.
myself from the opinions of people. And
Mm.
I do I don't want it to be understood as the, that, well, I don't care what people think about me, because we do. It just matters
Right.
who the people are, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
However,
Yeah.
I can care and cast, right? So that means I can
Mm.
care because I love you, but I can cast that onto God and let Him carry that for me, because I'm not
Hmm.
responsible for, bearing my own cross. Like, I'm not responsible for that. It was already done on the cross. And so I've
Yes.
just always learned how to, that's how I learned how to forgive myself freely,
Yeah. What do you
and
say to
move forward.
someone who they have a hard time letting go of the either the pain, the
Hmm.
guilt,
Hmm.
like and they struggle with releasing it? What do you say
Hmm.
to those individuals, those women that just struggle to release in love?
So what I would do is I would actually ask them, um, who taught you that pain was your safe place?
Mm.
And the reason I would ask them that question is because I know that they have created this space, like I said earlier, of comfort. And there is a level of deserving. They don't believe that they deserve to be happy. They don't
Hmm.
believe that they deserve to be healed. They don't believe they deserve to be whole. And so, who taught you that? Because that's a borrowed belief system that needs to be broken. Okay. And so, that's what I would say, to them, because the reason why I wouldn't just say, hey, do one, two, three, is because there's a process that they need to go through to even identify that first. And a lot of times, what we can do inadvertently is we can try to get a prescription, but we haven't really truly identified the root cause. So I want them to identify the root cause, because once you identify that, you can break it.
Absolutely. I love that. Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that.
Mhm.
Dr. Dean, thank you so much. This was
You're welcome.
absolutely beautiful and such an inspirational journey for just not just restoration in love, but restoration in life, and
Mhm.
in knowing that God has the final say. Like,
Yes.
we may
Hmm.
think that something is over and done with and we on our way, and it's in the past, it's gone, and this we don't deserve this, or we don't. God has the final say,
Hmm.
and
Yes, it
he
does.
can restore, he can heal, he can move, he can shift, and he can
Hmm.
fulfill every single desire that we have in our hearts, and then some, because oftentimes
Absolutely.
I'm realizing our our minds really can't conceive the
Mm-mm.
magnitude of how much he loves us,
Yes.
and how much he has for us, which
Hmm.
is actually already ours. I think it's a
Absolutely.
matter of us just like realizing this is already in us. It's already ours,
Hmm.
and we
Hmm.
have the rights to it. It's ours already. So,
Yeah.
how can people find you if they wanted to stay connected with you and learn more about either your business, your programs, your classes? Like, how can people connect?
I am on all social media platforms as Shamieka Dean, or Dr. Shamieka Dean. Listen, when it comes to branding and marketing, you got to keep it consistent. All right. So,
Yeah.
Instagram, Dr. Shamieka Dean, Facebook, Dr. Shamieka Dean. My website is shamikadean.com. And that's where I hang out.
I love it. I love it. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.
And to those who are listening, remember that God always restores. We just have to
Yes.
allow, we have to be open, we have to surrender to the process. And the only way through it is through it.
Hmm.
And we love y'all. And I'm going to see you in the next episode. And thank you so much for joining. All right. Until next time. Bye.